Mortimer J. Adler is the director of the Institute for Philosophical Research and unquestionably the single most prolific educator in America. He is devoted to the idea that there are great ideas, that they are discernible and communicable.
My definition of the good teacher, which I have a hunch you will share, is a person who is himself dedicated to continued general learning. That is, the best teacher, in my own experience, is the teacher who, in the course of teaching, is learning. The teacher who has learned it all and is merely becoming a means of transmission, of dead knowledge, knowledge that's dead for him because it's not being actively acquired at the time, I think is, if you use your word, not inspiring. The inspiration that happens in the classroom is when the students see the teacher learn something, thinking, learning, ideas occurring. And that means the teacher has to be in, I know it's kind of trite to say that Socrates was the greatest teacher, but he was.
Yeah.
And he was simply because he was teaching while conducting an inquiry. His teaching was the conduct of an inquiry in which the students were engaged in the inquiry with him. Now, that seems to me is the kind of teaching that should go on in college.
Well, Socrates was also, was he not philosophically wedded to the notion that his principal job was to bring out that which was already latently inside his students, isn't that right?
In the Theaetetus, he describes himself as, when asked what he understands himself to be doing, he said, my performance is very much like that of the midwife. I don't give birth to ideas. The learner with whom I'm conversing gives birth to the ideas, and like the midwife, I'm there to make the labor pains of birth.
The maieutic function.
A lot easier, see? Yeah. In fact, the Socratic conception of teaching is one that is based upon the truth of the proposition that nothing that can be learned needs a teacher. The teacher is, anything that can be learned can be discovered by the learner without the aid of a teacher. The teacher is never more than an aid, making it easier, sometimes quicker, but never indispensable. That is, the active learner is the student. St. Thomas used the same distinction. He makes the distinction between learning by instruction and learning by discovery. And when you look at St. Thomas's analysis of the difference between learning by instruction and learning by discovery, it's really a distinction between learning by aided discovery and learning by unaided discovery. Instruction is nothing but aided discovery, but the essence of learning is the discovery on the student's part. That's what Socrates was doing.
Yeah. Well, now, you were considered very much a conservative as regards the whole business of knowledge, as I understand it. You are what they call an epistemological optimist. You believe that there are certain great ideas, right? That they have been discovered, that they have almost an objective validity. Now this puts you very much against current fashionable notions about learning, does it not?
First place, I wouldn't speak of the validity of an idea, because an idea really is a vast area of inquiry. The great ideas like justice, or freedom, or labor, or language, or law, or infinity, or immortality, or soul, or mind, take any one of them, represent a whole area of human inquiry in which there are true and false propositions. The idea is neither true nor false. It represents a kind of a world for the mind to, each idea is a kind of small world for the mind to investigate.
In the course of attempting to revive an interest in the great books and in the great ideas, you are in effect making a commitment to their perennial usefulness.
I'm glad you didn't say relevance.
Yeah. Now, the accent in education, I understand to be different now. The accent in education has more to do with what it is that we can find out at this particular moment that permits us to adapt to the historical situation. And this is different from the accent that you seek to
Well, you know,
make.
even that's a curious thing. You realize that at the time that England was the leading nation in the Western world, imperial power running half the world during the middle of the 19th century, and the empire was at its height. What was the training of its very efficient civil servants who dealt with the problems of the day? They went to Oxford and took ancient greats. And what did they do at Oxford 4 years taking ancient greats? They read Plato's Republic and Aristotle's Politics. And that was the essential training of the functioning, on the whole, very efficient civil service, not the elected, but the stable civil service of the British Empire. I'm not now defending the British Empire. I'm only saying that the careful study...
You may, if you like.
I have some admiration for the Queen. But the careful study of a few basic texts, particularly when they're as good as the Republic, which raises every kind of question about the state. All the politics, which, by the way, as most students who don't read the politics any longer don't know, has all of Machiavelli in Book 6 on revolution. The great account of revolution and the modes of revolution is in Book 6 of the politics, you see. The unfortunate thing is the students today are totally unaware of the riches. And the riches in terms, if I may use their word, the riches in terms of relevance.
Now, why is that?
Because their teachers are ignorant.
Why?
Because they were badly taught.
Well, now, don't you assume that most people who have a doctorate have read Aristotle?
No. What I'm going to say now is very shocking. In this last book of mine, which really is nothing but an attempt, I shouldn't have to do it, to rewrite Aristotle's Ethics, which I think is the only sound, a pragmatic and undogmatic book in moral philosophy ever written. The only reason why what I try to do is to rewrite it in 20th century terms, change the language a little bit, change the imagery, but it's essentially the doctrine. I wrote a postscript to that book, which is a 50, 60-page commentary on Aristotle's Ethics. And in writing that postscript, I examined the whole literature of commentary. And all I can say to you is that the reading of Aristotle's Ethics by the contemporary, the writers of the last 100 years, 150 years, comes as close to being a non-reading as anything I mean, it's literally a non-reading. The missing of the point is so egregious, so it stands out so plainly that I think it's the great unread book.
But just people in general, for instance, other professors or businessmen or journalists or whoever, is it possible for you instantly?
I think I can from their speech. I think I can from the way they handle themselves in sentences. I think I can tell the mind that has some refinement and precision in the use of its critical terms from the mind that is undisciplined.
And from that, do you think you can infer what reading that person has done?
Yes, I think I can, for the very simple reason, and I say this with some hesitation because it's a risky thing to make one point, but you cannot teach a person to read well unless you, and particularly if he has a fine intelligence to begin with, a native aptitude, unless you make him struggle with texts that are very difficult and over his head.
At a very young age?
That's right.
Or you mean even...
As he goes, that is, the person who has in his reading, however widely it is, has dealt with readily intelligible stuff that he doesn't have to struggle to master, struggle to understand, is a person whose mind will not be pulled up to its full capacity. That's the only reason for the great books, really. Not only that, I mean, I shouldn't say that. The reason over and above their content is that it is a sharpening stone. It's something you have to sharpen your mind on.